Hi, everybody. Jenica Williams here, Keller Williams Realty, and I'm here with Dennis Candler of United Property Inspectors. And let me just see, because I can't, maybe, there we go. Okay, sorry. So we are going to chat with him today, kind of learn a little bit about him. So we've been over the last number of years kind of interviewing our vendors, sharing their experience with our fans, friends, clients, and we're just excited to kind of show off one of our vendors and what they do for us and what they do for our clients, and so that you guys can get to know them a little better. So Dennis, we'll kind of start off with, tell us a little bit about your company, how long you've been doing inspections. I know the very first thing that stuck out to me, the first inspection that we did, was, if any of you are familiar with the attic access lid or whatever it's called, those can get really dirty and they're flat paint. And Dennis uses a towel to put his hands up there when he tries to get in the attic. So I feel like that was like the extra step of really having that attention to detail. So that was something I was very impressed by, being detail oriented as I am. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks for having us, Jenica. Dennis Candler, United Property Inspectors. I did my very first inspection in 2004. Didn't really know what I was getting myself into as far as the industry is concerned, but I did inspections for quite some time, in and out of the business for the next 9 years. And in 2013, I bought the business that I was doing inspections for. So I've owned the business. This is my 10th year of owning the business. So we do, commercial and residential primarily, about 85% residential. The rest is commercial, mold, or some standalone inspections as well. So we've enjoyed seeing the ebbs and flows of our market.
Yeah. It's an interesting time right now too, right?
Yep.
We're seeing different things than we may have seen in the last couple of years.
That's so
okay,
true.
So tell us a little bit about like why it's important for a buyer to get an inspection. And do you think maybe like they're buying their uncle's house and like they don't really need an inspection on that property, right? If it's like a family property and they're just, taking over it, do you think they would need an inspection for something like that?
That's up to them. I mean, my whole point is, if you're going to spend typically the largest investment in your life, you might want to get a third-party opinion and documentation on the condition of that property, only because you've probably been in the house 4 or 5 times by now before you've made an offer. You've got, somewhat buyer's goggles on or seller's goggles on. You think the value is there or isn't there, but a third-party opinion is just that. It's a good way to document things that need to be done. It's a good way to document, how many times does a buyer pull off a panel, electrical panel, to see the insides of an electrical panel? Rarely, if any, unless they're in the business. And even then, if you are in the business, I love doing inspections for construction people with construction backgrounds, only because we don't scare them with the comments. And they typically understand the maintainability of a house. But we're there to help them negotiate the repairs, et cetera, and document those from a third-party point of view. Because if they come in with a list of repairs, it holds a little less weight than a third-party opinion. So, when you're doing 12 to 1,500 houses a year, we do see a little bit of patterns of how well a house has been maintained. We do see patterns of, okay, we're going to have a potential issue here if this isn't addressed. So those are all good things to document and get, listed out for negotiation purposes or for maintenance purposes down the road. One thing I do, whenever we see a house that's booked for an inspection, the first thing I teach all my guys, and the first thing I was taught, was what year was the house built? And we always have okay, if we know the house was built in 60s and 70s, we've got potential for asbestos, lead-based paint, aluminum wiring. So those are the things we kind of look out for based on those years. Then we have the bad ABS era, which is, 86 to 91. Then we have the Kitech era, which is, 1999 to 2004. So it all depends on the era of what the house has been constructed. That usually deems the most important piece for us, other than the typical caulking and, drainage and gutters and roof repairs, et cetera.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. And I'll say even too, with when it is your family's home, I mean, we've had clients that said, oh yeah, I didn't get an inspection when it was like my grandma's home or my, uncle's home, and they wish that they would have. So even my advice to clients would be, even if it is a family home, like you still should get it inspected so you know what you're walking into, even if you don't plan to ask whoever your family member is to do repairs. That way you're aware of it and you can, budget for those things that might need repair.
Yeah. I've also had one of my guys inspect my new homes. So I don't, I'm coming in with will it fit here? I got to do this to the garage. I'm thinking of all these things that I want to do, but I have one of my guys go in. The last 2 times I purchased the house, I've had one of my lead inspectors go in and actually inspect the house. So
yeah, that says a lot right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. And then what do you feel like, which items are more major for buyers to be concerned about, and like deal breaker type issues? And I know it's going to depend on, their budget and whatnot. And then what are more minor things that buyers don't have to be as, worried about, that are more maintenance kind of issues?
That's a great question. And it's probably the most variable or most moving part in our profession. There's no licensing in the state of California for home inspectors. So what I try to do is categorize our reports from safety, recommended repairs, and general maintenance. Obviously, safety items are going to be in red, but we do recommend safety items being addressed prior to taking occupancy or getting addressed prior to going on the market, only because it's a safety item, and we want to, maintain personal safety, whoever's buying the house, whoever's selling the house, et cetera. And then recommended repairs. That is a big one. For instance, we could have a cut truss. We can have structural issues. It wouldn't end up as a safety item, but that is more than a $500 or more repair. So we put that in there, and that would be a big issue for me, is structural or anything that could lead to a structural item. And then there's a maintainability effect, dirty filters, caulking of the baseboards and the bathrooms. Those are all green items in our report that are a maintenance item. It's a maintenance request for us. So the big things for me are structural, mechanical. We always try to pull dates off heating and air, water heaters, because those could be big ticket items when you move in and if they fail. Now, we base everything off of averages, industry averages. So if an HVAC is older than 15 years, that's something you should consider budgeting in the next 3 to 5 years, or maintain that home warranty. So that in case it does go out, you do have a little bit of leverage to get it replaced. So those are probably the biggest things I would look out for, your mechanical and structural. Everything else, in my opinion, can be repaired over time, replaced, et cetera.
Got it. Okay. And then which items are not part of your inspection? Like sometimes buyers might think, you inspect every single thing. Are there certain items that are, not within your scope that they might need someone else to check out or look at themselves?
Two things that I usually comment on: low voltage or audio visual stuff like home theater systems or alarm systems, video, and those alarm systems. Those are excluded from our inspections. And also specialty stuff like solar panels, the productivity of those solar panels. Those are beyond our scope. Or sometimes we'll get a high-end water filtration system. Those are beyond our scope. But everything else is pretty much, something we test out. I mean, if we can access to it, we at least, comment on it. If we don't know what it is, we can comment on it, go back. And that's why we have a 24-hour period before we deliver our reports, because just in case we don't know about something, we'll go back and research, gather as a team, talk about it. Has anybody seen this? What's the call out? If we need a specialist, we typically defer it to a specialist at that point. But those two main things, any specialty equipment and low voltage equipment, are excluded from our inspections.
That's good to know. And then what do you think, in what case it would be important for like a seller to get inspection? It's really common in the Bay Area for sellers to get these pre-listing inspections. So what do you what's your take on that? Or have you seen more of that? I know we sometimes will recommend it kind of depending on the condition of the home for our sellers. So
Well,
just want to get your take on that.
Yeah, it also helps you, provide, evaluate what you're going to list it as for your competitive market analysis, right?
Yeah.
And the sellers say, hey, we should be up here, and you're like, well, I recommend an inspection. So I've seen that happen. But that's the largest growth of my company this last year was pre-listing inspections. And I think a lot of it has to do with the demand, or maybe the culture of the Bay Area moving into the Sacramento proper area, the 4 counties. But it's an acronym for me. I always try to go in agent offices and discuss control. It's CVT: control, value or equity, and time. You stay in control of the transaction by getting things addressed up front. You're protecting your equity or the value of your house by not negotiating it at the 11th hour by having another third party come in and you're already thinking about the next house. And third, time. You're saving time through this whole process. You can do a faster contingency. You can do all kinds of things that keep you in control. Control and time are kind of the same things for me, but so control, value, and time is how I look at pre-listed inspections. And keep in mind, if I look, I think there was a Zillow Group Consumer Housing Trends ranked inspections as the number 4 reason for failed escrows. So 15% of failed escrows are due to inspections. So that's one thing you can eliminate by doing a pre-listing.
Yeah, that's so true. And then you're going in knowing, the buyers know ahead of time when they make that offer, right, what they're getting into, and maybe they'd sign an as-is clause saying we might get our own inspections, but we won't ask for anything. That's so true.
But one of the things I'd like to elaborate just a little bit more, even if a client does do a pre-listing inspections through us, they do find a buyer. That buyer is always willing to call us. We can go over the report for them. And also we can come back out on site and walk the property with them, explain what's in the report, why we documented it that way, potential fixes. There is a fee for that. But then we'd rename the report in their name so they could have, a throat to choke, so to speak. If something comes up, give us an opportunity to go back out there, question it, repair it, provide some insights to it. So, we're looking at it as a full circle. I like to move real estate through inspections. So, whatever it takes to get the transaction completed with a happy client, both selling buying side, that's my goal. I want to do a thorough inspection. I don't want anything hidden. And if we can't address it, let's hire a professional in that category or area of expertise that can.
Yeah, that's great. And that's good to know that you'll come back out with that buyer, because that's one of the things we'll suggest is even if the sellers, if we're representing a buyer, have done an inspection, we oftentimes recommend that we still hire you guys to go back out and look at it again, because there's things that could have been missed and it doesn't protect the buyer if it was done on the seller's behalf. So that's
repaired.
Correct.
Yeah. So great. I like that.
Cool. And then what areas do you typically serve, would you say? What's your guys' territory?
Well, for Jenica, we serve wherever she goes. No, if it's an agent that uses us on a regular basis, sometimes they're going to have a transaction in Lodi. Sometimes they're going to have a transaction in Plumas Lake, El Dorado County. We'll make that exception and go there. If it's a newer agent that we're trying to, that's, heard about us or something, it all depends on the situation. If the house is big enough or it's a commercial property, well, I'll take a team out there and it's cost justified, we'll do it. But typically the 4 4 counties: El Dorado, Sac, Yolo, and Placer. Mostly Sacramento, Placer, and the lower parts of El Dorado.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. And then, do you think it's important when buyers, I know our buyers often come to the inspection at the end, so you can walk them through that. Can you tell us a little bit about that process and just your take on kind of the value of being at the inspection versus just getting the report? You can look it over. I mean, that's always an option, but what is your take on that?
Yeah, it was funny because back in the COVID days, when COVID hit and everything was a video conference, we were getting videoed. That was the alternative to a client showing up for a walkthrough. I was getting a lot more callbacks on the reports. I mean, I've always thought value to show up at the inspection. It's an opportunity for them to ask questions about the house, of any concerns that they have, why we were documented a certain way, what was covered. And if they felt like we didn't cover something, they would ask why, and maybe we would have a back and forth. You know, to come to a conclusion, maybe they would hire a specialist in that field. Or, you know, if, hey, we've got a pool and you know what, the pool's in great condition, but I've got several concerns on, you know, maybe the surface of the pool, the surface cracking, or maybe there's something else going on, you know, we can address it right then and there. Whereas if they weren't there at the time and they saw the report, they'd probably go, oh my heavens, the pool needs to be replaced, you know? So the value of having a walkthrough is imperative, in my opinion. We have a lot less callbacks if there is a walkthrough, and it's an opportunity for everybody, agents, sometimes sellers are there now to have a full conversation, and we can come to a conclusion and not leave this up in the air. So we've had much more success in transactions being completed when there is a walkthrough.
Yeah. And I agree. I think being there, or if at the least doing a video conference, so you can kind of, because you can ask, they can ask you questions, and there's certain things like we as agents don't know the answer to. And so being able to have you in real time is helpful as you're walking around, because there might, those issues especially to like a first time buyer, they might be huge, but then, you know, maybe they're just more maintenance items, and you can explain that it's, you know, dry rot's normal on almost every house, you know, it's not this thing to be afraid of. So, okay, cool. And then can you tell us, we know we did a YouTube on like permits and how so many people don't pull permits and, you know, the whole thing. Do you oftentimes, can you tell if something is not permitted, and when should a buyer be concerned if something, you know, which things are more important if they're not permitted that they need to be concerned about versus something that, oh, you know, they didn't, you know.
If even items that have been permitted don't always necessarily meet the needs of a building standard requirement. So now we're not code enforcement, but we do base our inspections off of building standards, or what we call codes. Code's a 4-letter word to us. I try not to use it in any conversation. I just call it a building standard. Everything is documented based on a third-party valuation building standard for us. So that's what it's backed up. Now, back to your question, you know, yeah, there are times where, you know, rarely is a water heater permitted. Although if you call the city, they're going to say, yes, it should be permitted every time. So there's a lot of, you know, there's 7 pages in a quick reference guide on how to install a water heater. So it's a very target rich area. And I'm using this one as an example. You could probably find out pretty quick if that wasn't permitted. So that's a good example. Other examples are maybe electrical is updated. No arc faults are put in. Anything after 2002, there should be an arc fault. You know, one of my inspectors just had an update to their kitchen, and they had to, you know, add a sub panel, and he's like, where's the arc faults? So, and it was permitted. So anyway, it's one of those things. You know, sometimes the contractors have been around for 35 years and they're just old school. They do absolutely amazing work, but they're not currently, you know, up to speed on certain things or whatever, on new codes or whatever. I mean, not saying that we are, but every year that comes out, we do have material that educates us on maybe some variations of electrical, plumbing, or new standards like water sense features, like a 1.5 gallon flush toilet now is required in California. So little things like that. But, permitting doesn't necessarily ensure perfection. I look at it as quality of work. I mean, there's some things that I've seen that were done absolutely beautiful that weren't permitted. I would have been okay with that. I had something installed that wasn't permitted. I won't say what at my house. I didn't feel like it was needed. They did an absolute amazing job. But if it was permitted, it probably wouldn't. The design of it would have had to change a little bit. And I didn't want to go through that process. So
yeah. So you have to make a decision for yourself, and then you can disclose, when you sell. We did a patio cover and also we got it approved by the HOA, but not permitted because we might have had to have one more post, but the patio guy's like, you don't really need it. So, and then we'll just disclose when we sell.
That's funny you say that. That's the exact area I was referring to. HOA approved. Yeah, HOA approved, not permitted.
Yeah. And I would say most buyers are not super concerned about that. I did have one in Anatolia and Rancho Cordova where the seller did not permit it. We disclosed it, and then she did want them to come back out. So we did call the city out. They looked at it and signed off on it, and she paid for the permit. So they actually didn't make her add any additional things, but I know it's just one of those things. And it's hard when the tradesmen are telling you, you don't need a permit, and then they're pushing you against it. And then you're like, oh, well, I have to. So it's the whole, anyway. Okay. A couple of last questions. What do you think about like a new home? Do you think you need an inspection for a brand new home? Do you think that's, something a buyer should do when they're buying brand new construction?
Okay. So I'm not going to call out any builders, but we do about 60. We did 65 new homes last year. Oh. And, we're on pace to break that record already this year. And now we're talking new homes before the buyer moves in, before they get keys. And we also do phased inspections like pre-drywall and post-drywall. So those are all something that we recommend. And once we get into a specific community, the word seems to spread, and we'll just get like the next neighbor and the next neighbor, the next neighbor. So it kind of just word of mouth. It happens that way. I will tell you that we do find stuff, and it is good. And if you can't get the builder to accept an inspection prior to getting your keys, at minimum, bring us out 10 months, 11 months in, so you can document everything that year for that 1 year warranty, because the builder's going to want to know everything at that point. Hey, you've been living in a year, what's up? Yeah. So just keep in mind, the latent defect law still applies for any structural issues. If there are any roof issues or window issues or foundation issues, those are all considered latent defects. So that's covered for 10 years for every builder. Now, I will tell you that an agent in your office, they used to be in your office, he used to be in your office, he's part of a team, purchased a $1.5 million house, El Dorado Hills. He'd been there for 11 months. And in November, we went out and inspected it. And I got up on the roof, and there was 3 large sections of the roof that were not installed. Literally no tile. I'm talking 3 by 5 feet, just raw paper looking right down at it. So I took pictures. They were also in the report, but I took pictures and texted him right away. And he was like, I've been living here for a year with 3 sections of the roof. So, is it worth it? I'll tell you 80% of the time it's little stuff, but it's that 20% you don't want to have to deal with.
Yeah, so, that's huge. I know a number of our clients have done it where they've done, it right before the 1 year mark. We've referred a number of clients to you to do that. So that's interesting. Yeah, we can talk off the record about some of the other stuff in regards to that, because I have some more questions. Okay, so last question is, what's the craziest thing you've seen at an inspection that you want to share with us?
Well, I'm going to keep it light because, other than the conditions of a property or the living conditions of a seller or renter, I don't want to get into that. That's the absolute worst. But I remember I was probably 3-4 years into the industry, and I came up to this house. It was a 1930s house. I was by myself, and it backed up to a school. And I remember I was doing the grounds. That's one of the first thing I do. Look about drainage, how's everything going? And the house looks a little dilapidated, but it was 2 stories, kind of, whatever. And these kids were out at recess, and they were yelling up to me, hey, mister, hey, mister. And I, instead of, just ignoring them, I said, yeah, what's going on? They said, that house is haunted. So I go, okay, thank you. But for the next 2 hours of me inspecting that house, I could not get that thought out of my mind, because everywhere I turned, it was a creak, or the stairs were like off. I was like walking up the side, walking up to the second story, like the house was tilted. And I was like, okay, so that was pretty interesting. I will never forget that one. And the last one was, we were in Winchester Country Club. You know where that is? Like Auburn area.
Okay. Yeah.
So they're big custom houses. And we could not find the water heater. Like, I mean, we're done with the inspection. Hot water's flowing. Where's the water heater? We'd been in the attic. We'd been underneath the house. Could not find the water heater. So much so we spent like 4 hours trying to find the water heater. Could not find it. So I wrote it up, could not find the water heater. And then I woke up one morning and I called the agent and go, hey, let me come back out to the house. So we go back out to the house, and I crawl underneath the house, and there was a big like HVAC ducting underneath that was hollow. So I just started to crawl through that, and sure enough, it dropped into a concrete bunker. It was a whole separate room with a water heater and a couple other, like an electrical panel. And I was like, oh my goodness, I would have never thought it. So I literally had to crawl through a ducting to get into this bunker. I don't know what they were using it for, but those are 2 things I will never forget.
Yeah. Wow. That's interesting. Yeah. And the haunted house. I mean, you never know with all the homes that you see. I'm sure that,
Yeah.
a few of them have to be haunted.
And the kids are so honest that you're like, they know something, right?
Yeah. Yeah. They're here every day at school, and they might seen something
Right.
you haven't. Well, thank you so much for sharing. This was really valuable, and we just appreciate your time and your professionalism, and we look forward to doing more inspections in the future. And I just think it was really, really helpful.
Good. I appreciate you very much, Jenica. You and your team, you guys are awesome as well.
No problem. And then how can people get a hold of you? Other agents who want to use you, or what's the best way to get in touch with you guys?
So you can go online to unitedpropertyinspectors.net or upii.net. It'll take you to our website. You can schedule on that way, or you can call our office, 916-788-1111 or 1111. Tanya is there, always answering the phone. She's quite helpful. She's been in the industry longer than I have, so she understands the inspection booking process quite well. And we also have a real estate dashboard application that, agents that use us a lot can, book online that way too. So you can email us to team, @upii.net. Anyway, we'll accommodate your bookings and get you scheduled.
Cool. And yeah, you guys are awesome for just, accessibility, or that agent dashboard is really helpful. And they have a bunch of 5-star reviews on Google. So you look them up there.
Thank you so much.
Okay, well, have a great day. Thanks for your time.
You too, Jenica. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.